Hey, welcome to the show, everybody. It's Wednesday. It's time for another awesome episode of the Leadership Toolkit. As you know, it's your definitive leadership growth podcast for entrepreneurs, managers, people that are in executive positions, all different verticals of business, all over the country, sometimes all over the world. And so I have the absolute pleasure to connect with people from all different areas of business and have conversations. We talk about leadership, we talk about growth, we talk about what their wins are and how you can win. We sometimes talk about how they hit a wall and how you can avoid that, because that's way more awesome than running into a wall yourself when you can learn from other people. So today is no different. I have got the amazing Jess Jensen. She is the founder of Copilot Communications. She's been got more than 20 years of experience with Fortune 500 companies like Microsoft and Adidas and Qualcomm. She helps C-suite leaders elevate. I was going to say elaborate, but that's not it. She helps C-suite leaders elevate their social presence. She does branding for that. And she is one of the first Adidas Facebook pages. We were talking right before we went on, back in the day, back in like 2007, probably 2008. So I am going to bring Jess Jensen from Copilot Communications on today. So Jess, thank you so much for joining me on the Leadership Toolkit.
Mike, it's great to be here.
So if you would, I would love for you to just sort of take people back and share a little bit. Well, first off, what is Copilot Communications? Can you can elaborate on that far better than I can, if you would share what you do, and then take people back in time. How did you get into that, and how did you become a leader in this space?
Happy to. Yeah, so I'm a digital brand and communications strategist. Within Copilot, I help executives and founders really build authority online. And so a lot of that is found in places like social, podcasting as well. It can take the shape, of course, of things like blogs and other digital formats, but really harnessing their personality, their origin story, their natural voices to build a digital presence that represents not just their company and their product announcements and earnings calls, but also them as a full human.
And so how did you get started in this? Where take us back, because you've been doing this, you said for you've been doing this piece for like 20 years. Again, you started off early on Facebook. Go back before Facebook time, if you would. And how did you get here?
I love that, before Facebook time. That's going to be our new moniker. So about 5 years between undergrad and grad school, I was on the agency side. So early in my 20s, that was sort of where I cut my teeth and got a chance to work in client-facing roles, understand. Back then, it was really largely website design. That was the largest digital component of a marketing mix, but also traditional media too, right? Out of home, print, TV. And then went to business school for a couple of years down in Southern California. Wanted to move out of the agency world and over to the brand or the client side. My first role was at Nestlé as a brand manager. I looked after the confections and snacks division. Specifically, I was in charge of Valentine's Day confections, which was fun. I still walk down the aisles in Target every February and sort of look to see what the new products are from the consumer packaged goods companies. So that was, again, pre-social, right? So social media was beginning to bubble, but really at that point, it was only EDU addresses, right? It was only college students that were involved. There was some MySpace back then, maybe Friendster, but it was really very nascent.
Who's in your six, right?
And it wasn't at all being used at a company level or an executive level. It was super early. So Nestle, as a brand manager, again, was classic marketing training, right? I managed a P&L. I had to, think about things like product innovation, selling into big retailers like Walmart and Target, pricing strategy, and then, of course, the promotion P of the classic 4 Ps. So that was an amazing foundation, right? Because it really helped me understand the kind of the full business, not just the marketing component, but how marketing can be a business driver in terms of profitability and revenue. And then from there, I went to Adidas, and Adidas was really an important chapter because Adidas, I was in the lifestyle division. So if you think about the world of athletic footwear, there's sort of the on the pitch, off the pitch, or on the court, off the court, as we would say.
Right.
And so I wasn't in the sports side, I was in the lifestyle side. So this was sort of music, skateboarding, hip hop culture, graffiti art, all of that.
That's cool.
Yeah. And I think it also allowed us to be a little bit more experimental. And so that was the era, as you were saying at the top, where Facebook opened up to the public. And so we were one of the early adopters. I had a wonderful manager who was, again, open to experimentation. And myself and an intern just one day decided we'd create a Facebook page for Adidas Originals. And we didn't really know what we were doing. Again, there was no paid media. There was so much that wasn't there at that point. It wasn't even an app on our smartphones. Right. So the benefit of getting in so early and having a culture that allowed for some kind of experimentation and creativity is I learned to not kind of wait for perfection. I realized that if I know just enough about broad marketing principles, I can probably figure it out once we get in there. So that opened up some doors for me, and I transitioned into the tech industry, which again was fortuitous. I had, I'm such a believer in your network is so powerful. It's probably a whole separate conversation.
Absolutely.
But I mean, it was through my network. I had some connections up at Microsoft. And I remember, being very reluctant in those days, even though I had an MBA and I, had a couple of big companies under my belt. I had never worked in tech. And I remember being very reluctant to even consider it because it felt like, I'm not an engineer. I'm not a developer. I'm never going to fit in this culture. Why would they want me? But they wanted me because I had done at that point now, 3 to 5 years of early social media, digital marketing, building community online, which a lot of companies were just kind of coming into that space at that point. So that was a really important pivot, right? Because from there on out, I worked in tech, first at Microsoft and later at Qualcomm. And as I transitioned through my career, into my 30s and early 40s, it became apparent, fast forwarding, Qualcomm in that era, this is maybe 2016, 17. Now, as we were talking earlier about podcasts, now the social media space was getting more and more competitive. There were, every company had a presence on multiple platforms. And, we were seeing a loss of all of the important metrics, right? Our reach was going down, our engagement wasn't great. And we recognized that there was an opportunity to begin to stand up our leaders, our C-suite largely, in addition to all of the blocking and tackling we would do with the brand, because they were people and people trust people. They trust them far more than they do companies and brands, especially today. So I built that practice in-house at Qualcomm over the course of about 4 or 5 years. And I began to really get comfortable working with seasoned senior leaders, bringing forward all of my background in digital and social, as well as at that point, I had enough confidence and seniority where I could sort of partner with them to help pull out their stories and teach them not just how to use these platforms to their advantage and obviously the advantage of the business, but also to show up as more than just a press release, which is often the tendency for folks.
So let me pause you here for just 1 second, because I got a couple things that stand out. What I think a lot of people, and this is one of the things I picked up on when you were like, hey, I got into tech, and you were sort of this creative and marketer and so forth. And obviously we just met, so I'm not trying to put all your personality right into a box after 10 minutes, right? What many people will not understand, and I think this is important from a leadership standpoint, oftentimes tech and creativity are not like this, right? Those sorts of people think completely differently. And I think that that's really valuable that you had somebody on the come up in your corner of leadership saying, hey, let's take a chance. Let's do this and let's do that. Starting with Adidas and moving into some of these other places. At least that's one of the things that I'm hearing. Because then you're like, hey, I'm willing to go after it and take this chance and so forth. Where tech is often very much, or in the past, at least my perception of it is very much more process oriented. This is how we do it, sort of stuff. So that to me is really cool. The other thing that you said, and man, I have said this for years. I've said it with our auto dealerships, as we were talking beforehand, doing marketing and advertising there and so forth. People love people way more than they love brands. And when you're talking about this going back in the metrics, I think we can get spun up right now. If you are an entrepreneur, a manager, a leader, one of the things that I want you to hear from Jess saying this is it's not always about the metrics. I mean, yes, metrics are important, but when you start just trying to measure people by engagement, by this, like back in the day, you'll appreciate this, Jess. Like it was like, how many likes can we get on our Facebook page, right? But I remember at one point somebody saying to me, it was a friend of mine, or we were having a conversation, and he says, "Yeah, but you can't take likes out of the ATM." So how do you gauge stuff like that? And I think you shifting to the very personal side is really, really powerful. Not to go way off in a rabbit hole, but it's like, even right now, it's some of the most powerful viral stuff that you see is like the CEO of McDonald's or whatever doing you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
And then that's followed by the Burger King guy and all these other CEOs trying their own products. So I'm sorry to interrupt you there, but if we get too far down the path, I'll forget to point out some of these things. And I want people to hear that. Like it and you may not even realize as you're saying it, and I'm listening, Jess, it's like some of that experiential stuff that you got to take in business is so powerful because of the leaders that were willing to let you take the chance. And then kudos to you for being willing to take the chance. I mean, one of the things that you emailed me was talking about, it's less about perfection, less about the business and more about people. And I want to expand on that. But before we go there, so how does that lead to co-pilot communications? What year does that happen? And I want to walk through your brain, like, because to me, you're mentioning some big, cool company like Adidas and Microsoft and all this. And you're like, yeah, and I'm doing the thing. And, what in your brain flips to say, okay, it's time?
Yeah, great question. So that practice that I had been building at Qualcomm those last 4 or 5 years I was there, really like it translated from sort of the more macro corporate digital marketing, social media, and brand building, to really focusing much more on the individual leaders. And I really became a kind of a partner and a coach and a friend in many ways.
Sure.
So I, as I did that year after year, eventually was able to get more resources and hire, a head to support. It became less of this sort of side project or this pilot, which is often how I would pitch my ideas. And it became more of a part of our practice as a company. What's our executive comms approach? And not just in the traditional sort of, let's get them, on CNBC, or let's, pitch them to, the Wall Street Journal. Like, how do we actually have them directly talking on digital platforms? Sure. And so I just recognized, this could be its own practice. Like, this doesn't have to sit inside of a large corporation. Like, I could do this for clients on my own if I wanted to. So that was one sort of like moment that I recognized what I had built. And then two, at that point, again, it had been about 20 years, 4 companies. I think I always had an entrepreneurial spirit inside of me. I was always, when I look back, I was always pitching ideas. I was always trying to push our leadership to try something new. And sometimes, inside these large matrix organizations, that things can take years to really get off the ground. It sometimes moves slowly. But I knew that I had that inside of me. And I think that the pandemic, like so many of us, was a turning point, personally, professionally. I recognize like, okay, I have another 10-ish, maybe 15 years of like going after it professionally. So do I want to continue to ride this train, this corporate train, and sort of, live inside these big companies? That's a great option for a lot of folks. Or is this maybe a moment where I take all this experience and I put it to work on my own as a founder? So I launched Copilot in the winter of 2024. So it's been about a year and a half. And
Awesome.
yeah, and it has been, I'm doing the work I love, which is great for people that I really, really respect. But it's also been, once again, kind of an entrepreneurial reinvention, because I've had to teach myself how to build and run a business, which frankly, I've been a student of that over the last 2 years.
That is awesome. I love the story. And something I want to point out, and especially for my audience, because we have people, some of them that are maybe moving into management, some people that are probably asking the question, should I go do my own thing? Like, how do you know? Do you remember what the like that pushed you over the edge? Like, okay, hey, this is it. Was there a specific event? Was it just sort of, hey, I've got this culmination of all this awesome stuff and I could go do this for people? Like, how do you know? And then secondarily, I have two questions because I suck at asking just one. One, how do you know when it was time? And two, well, let's answer that one first.
Yeah. Well, I'm such a believer in across the board that things, people, moments come into your life for a reason. And so much of the time, we don't know in the moment what that reason will actually transcend and become. But we have to just say yes sometimes and not completely know what's coming next, but just go based on sort of instinct. And so to answer your question, so when I was at Qualcomm, so during the pandemic, I had relocated. So I was done in San Diego. That's where it's headquartered. Okay. And we lived there for over 8 years. I had relocated to Portland, which is where a lot of my family is based, and worked here for another 2 years remotely, as all of us did during those early years. And there was a moment where it was pretty clear that if we, especially were in a leadership position and had teams that we were managing, that we needed to be back in San Diego. And I had been here for a couple of years. I had bought a home and reestablished a community. And that wasn't my next chapter. It wasn't to return back to San Diego. So I thought, this is the moment, right? This is where I take all those things that I've learned and acquired and the broad network I've built and the entrepreneurial spirit, and stop thinking about it, right? Stop sort of penciling it out on the weekends and then putting it away and going back into work on Monday.
Sure.
But I actually take the leap.
So was it, even with all your experience, was it scary to take the leap?
Totally. Yes. And we can get into this, gets in beyond marketing and communications and just sort of broader like business planning, but
sure.
I'm a big believer. So I think in sort of like comically, what I might do on the weekends, which perhaps sounds quite nerdy, is I actually really enjoy finance. I've always been a fan of numbers. I love studying investing, and it'll never be my full-time job, but it's something that I'm just sort of interested in.
Sure.
And so for me, a big part of deciding I was going to make that leap out of corporate was making sure that financially we had runway and a good long runway.
How long was the runway?
Well, I wanted to have 2 years.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So I wanted to know I could go for 2 years without any income and our family would be okay.
It's good.
And so I did a lot of homework to ensure that we had that runway before I made the decision to leave. Because for me, if I was going to build something, I knew there would be a ramp up. I'm not going to have clients out of the gates, of course. So there's just going to be a ramp up of what could be 6 months, could be a year, right? It didn't end up being that long, but I wanted to prepare for that. And then second, I knew that like the energy I wanted to put out into the world was not at all an energy of desperation or eagerness or, financial constriction. Like that is the last energy that somebody wants to hire.
Sure.
I wanted to know that I could be confident, I could be poised and calm, and I would really be able to put all of this expertise to work for the right kinds of clients, but I could do it in my own time and make those decisions from a place of stability.
It was really valuable. Thank you for sharing that, because that's really valuable. I think lots of times people want to take the leap, and I've had many people on the show, Jess, that sometimes they're like, yeah, you should have at least a 90-day runway. And you're saying, okay, 2 years. Well, so somebody can, figure out what's right for them. The key though, which I heard you say, is that allows you when you're starting the business, it's how you carry yourself. It's that emotional energy, the way you're connecting with people, because no matter what, even people say, oh, I want to be an entrepreneur, but I'm not really salesy. Well, yeah, you have to be if you're an entrepreneur at some point. And so I think the fact that you're saying, hey, I wanted this runway, I wanted to be confident, I wanted to be able to put all that expertise to work, that's really valuable advice for people that may be entering the space. And again, this is why I love just having a conversation on the show. This is not necessarily the path we're going down, but I just, in talking with you, I think that's such a valuable piece of advice. So, one thing I want to ask, because you were talking about, and you brought it up, sort of the entrepreneurial attitude versus, or entrepreneurial spirit versus corporate. What are some of the differences? Like if I'm thinking about, oh, hey, maybe I should do my own thing. And not that we're just giving everybody blanket advice, but what are some of those key differences? Maybe 4 or 5 things that, hey, this is how you might gauge, or this is what you felt having the entrepreneurial spirit versus maybe you should stay in corporate.
That's a great question. I would say one is, are you someone who is often identifying how things could be better? Right? You're identifying gaps, whether that's in how the process in which we do something, the way we allocate our budget, the audiences we're targeting, the products we're designing, whatever area of expertise is yours. But you're someone who is, if you're in a corporate environment, you're sort of always going, but wait, what if we did it this way? Or maybe we aren't asking the right questions, or just because we always did it doesn't mean we couldn't change now. However you think about change and sort of gap analysis, it was very natural for me to identify opportunities. And then maybe the difference with others is I think a lot of folks can identify them, but they might just stop there. And I was someone, again, going back to Adidas days, probably even before that, where I would identify it and then I would go to whoever my leadership was at the time and pitch an idea to try to go after it. So that was, again, kind of, it was an early signal that I probably had a little bit more entrepreneur in me than I realized. I wasn't someone who wanted to be kind of complacent and sort of, accept what was. I always wanted to be building and progressing forward. So that's one. I think there's also a builder mindset. I think it is so rewarding, in my opinion, with anything in your life to set a lofty goal, develop some type of roadmap, and then little by little, right? Baby step after baby step, you make incremental progress. Again, this could apply to sports, loads of things, parenting, right? You pick it, fitness, right? And so, and then, on some level, maybe tracking how you're doing. And it's amazing. You get 6 months, 12 months, 18 months into something, and then you look back at from where you came, and you are often astonished at the progress that you've made. So that's very motivating to me and very rewarding. And again, I think that's very much an entrepreneur. It's a builder mindset, that yes, I can create something. And yes, I gain a lot of sort of psychological benefit and well-being from watching something grow from like a seed to a plant.
Oh, 100% agree with you. I love that. So here's some things I picked out from, because the question was, and I want, especially someone that might be considering, hey, I might go do this thing. I might have some value to add. So there's a few questions you might ask, and this is purely, Jess, this is one of those where you correct me right away if I'm wrong. But one, you asked the question, are you always, or are you often identifying ways to be better? Are you identifying ways in the business that you can improve things? Something that you said earlier that I added to this, and you did not say it just now, but I think it's valuable. Are you pushing your leaders to move? You had mentioned that earlier. And if you're somebody that like, hey, I'm here, but I'm not just showing up and punching the clock and doing the thing. I'm pushing leadership to move. I'm pushing management to move and willing to contribute ideas. And again, that's not something you said specifically, but I definitely picked it up from you earlier. And so I wanted to add that. And then also, how can you fill the gap? How can I contribute? What can I do to contribute more? And then you kind of closed here with the builder mindset, which is really valuable. So those are just something, and we could go on that again, this could be an 8-hour podcast. We could sit and dive into that of that entrepreneurial spirit. But I always just like to have that conversation when people that have moved into business and are seeing a lot of success, because I think that's one of the things that just pointing out, if you're looking to take the leap, it is scary, and you got to come up and say, okay, well, what am I going to do? And do I meet these things? Because there's lots of people that are very comfortable and confident in corporate, and you can, build your 401k, do your thing, and still lead from the center of an organization too, that's established. So
yeah, well, and I will add, I didn't necessarily think this way a couple of years back when I started this, but now
Sure.
I'm seeing it play out. It's funny. I think a lot of us have a belief, and me included, that working inside of a large corporation is security.
Mm.
And right. Is it though? Exactly. Right. We see the same paycheck come in every 2 weeks. We have a 401k match, insurance, all the things, right? Paid vacation, all that. Check, check, check. But we have seen just in the last 2 years, right? Massive reductions, layoffs. And I specifically obviously watch the tech industry still very closely. And many of my clients are in the tech space now too. And so
Sure.
That's been hit very, very hard. And I just question whether we might actually have more, quote, control and more ability to pull levers if we're running our own company than if we're embedded inside of a larger corporation these days.
Fair. That's fair. Hey, one thing I want to make sure and mention this, especially if people are listening on the audio podcast later. As you know, we stream this live on YouTube and LinkedIn and Facebook, and then repost throughout the next week, and often much longer than that. Couple things to point out. If you're listening on the audio version, if you want to connect with Jess, LinkedIn is her space. Her and I were talking beforehand. So you can go to linkedin.com/in/Jessica K. Jensen. So JESSICA Jensen, JENSEN. That's all one word, no spaces, no dashes. So you can find her there. Also, copilotcommunications.com. I will not spell all of that out. It's spelled just how it sounds with no breaks and so forth. Copilotcommunications.com. So for personal branding, social media, especially if you're a C-suite leader in your organization, or if you're somebody that is an entrepreneur that you're like, man, I need to do better at this. As I'm talking to you, I'm thinking, I need to do better at this. So who knows? Maybe you and I will talk some more later on that level. So make sure and connect with her. And I would encourage you, not just from the business standpoint, but certainly you can see from the conversation, Jess is an awesome person. So um, here's one of the questions. We started to touch on it a little bit, but I'd like you to expand on this. Why is executive presence so much less about perfection right now? Like you brought up and you said, hey, this is the meat and potatoes of what you do. Like, how do we turn the person into the person? But why do you like, was there a shift somewhere? Does it have to do with all of the uh, social media platforms selling everything to everybody? Is it
Mhm.
AI that's made the shift? Why is it such a big shift right now that people are real and relatable compared to, I mean, maybe even like 10 years ago? Because social media 10 years ago was significantly different than it is today.
For sure. Well, I'd say there's been kind of two eras that to answer your question. That the first
Mhm.
one we talked about a little bit, which was as companies really came online from a social media perspective, and now we see this with podcasting as well. So it's pick your digital media category.
Sure.
It's just getting saturated, right? So we saw that years ago with social. Paid media contributed to that. Right now, there's just sort of the complexity of what's organic, what's paid. I feel like I'm being kind of bombarded. And so that was when, again, it became much more powerful to build a brand around a human as a leader, still a face of the business, but more than just the business.
Sure.
Because it was a way to differentiate. It was a way to cut through that kind of corporate clutter that we were seeing in social, 7, 8 years ago. Now, over the last 2 or 3 years, what's happened, of course, is our friend AI, right? Which, not a day goes by that I don't have a conversation about it in some form or fashion. I'm a big fan. I use LLMs all the time to help me move faster, be more efficient, synthesize my thinking. It is definitely a partner in crime in terms of my business. But I also know, like so many technologies, and this is again well discussed and documented. There's positives and negatives, and in my space in particular around building a professional brand, using digital platforms to communicate, we know that there is a proliferation of people using LLMs to write and create content, and in many ways that can be again a wonderful tool, but it can also obviously be misused. And so we're seeing kind of a lot of what I sometimes call sort of the wave of mediocrity.
Hmm.
A lot of people are creating content that doesn't really say much. It could sound like a lot of different people. It doesn't really sound like them anymore. Rather than leveraging AI as, again, a thought partner and a collaborator, maybe a research assistant, we're kind of copy pasting. And the opportunity there then heightens once again in this sort of second wave for leaders to again rise above and elevate out of that and say, yeah, of course we're going to leverage AI to our benefit, but defining what I stand for, what my narrative platform looks like, my editorial themes, and really my tone and voice, who I am first, which is the work I do with folks. And then we start to create the content, and we always ensure it's kind of returning to that blueprint, which is them, because that will cut through so much of what we're seeing right now in 2026.
Well, and I think that's, yes, 100% agree with you there. I think there's a lot right now, especially there's other companies that are popping up, right? That it's like the go-between of AI. It's these marketing companies that come up and say, hey, look, we can get AI to do everything for you. And it's like, no. One of the big keys is, and like you're saying, hey, it needs, it's a thought partner. I think it's important. And again, this is just my opinion. I'd be curious to hear your take on this. Of it's important, and it's okay to say, yeah, I use AI, but I train it, I load it, I edit it. There still has to be some human element to it. If you just let AI go on its own, that's where it becomes a mess, right?
Yeah. And I think it's to me, it's sloppy, right? You can use, and
Sure.
this is how any tool, right? There's ways you can use it to bolster and complement what you already think, what you already feel, how you already would make decisions on things. And then there's sort of a set it and forget it, kind of sloppy approach. And I don't mean to disparage anyone. I mean, I'm sure everyone's working as hard as they can. But it's just accelerated and sort of put a spotlight on leaders who are actually speaking in their own voice and rooting what they talk about in things that are meaningful to them.
In real experience,
right?
Sure.
And there's still, again, I see it today. There's still a reluctance for a lot of leaders too, to kind of build a platform that is more than just promoting their company. And it's a conversation that, I'm having literally right now, where I'm trying to sort of educate and express, look, I'm not trying to help you become an influencer. This is not like your personal brand for the sake of your personal brand. What we want to do is build a whole 360 human online, and of course there's certain things everyone wants to keep private, totally fine, park that over there. But let's talk about more than just product launches and press releases and earnings calls. Like, the company can do all of that. We want you to have a point of view on those important moments. Your point of view is what people are after. And B, you need to also be talking about other things besides just those company moments, because that's what makes people want to follow you, connect with you, comment, engage, and eventually you'll build your influence and your reach because of that holistic approach that then full circle now benefits the company, because the company has you as one of their public spokespeople.
Well, and I think what's important about that is one of the first things we actually, my pastor was sharing this last week. One of the first things that people have to do almost all the time online now is when they're looking at something and they're reading something, and even podcast, like AI's gotten so good at producing voice, at producing video, at producing, pictures and content. And there are a lot of things that it's gotten pretty good at. The first thing that people have to ask themselves, especially right now, because there's so much content being produced, is this real? Like, is this really who they are? Is that a genuine thought, or was it produced at a computer somewhere? And so I love the fact that you said, hey, it's important to share a point of view. It's important to share experience. It's important to share other stuff. Like, what are the things that you like and dislike? What's important? I mean, and it can't be so non-business, but what are the things that you stand for? I mean, how do you flesh that out a little bit more? I mean, is it, and what's the line, Jess? What's the line that someone should or shouldn't cross? If I'm the CEO of an organization, or I'm the owner as an entrepreneur, is there a line not to cross? I mean, let's stay on the positive side. I'm sure there's an easy line to not cross, but when it comes to like personal versus business and so forth.
Yeah. I mean, of course the answer is going to be, it varies based on the person, but I think that one of the benefits that came out of the pandemic is that for a lot of us who were in roles where we began to work remotely for sometimes a couple of years, I think it really merged our personal and professional lives on camera in many ways. Things were messier. Things were more complex. There weren't these sort of clean bifurcated lines of like, this is myself at work from 8 to 5, and this is myself at home in the weekends. And frankly, I think it was a long time coming. Like, that's not reality, I'm doing work stuff sometimes on a Sunday, and I might be going to a doctor's appointment on a Wednesday afternoon. Like, our lives are messy. They're not black and white. So I kind of welcomed that. I think that's just much more true to how we are.
100%.
And so I think that's the benefit of that, is now that's coming through online. Now, again, I don't mean to say that you should be sharing everything or unloading heavy subjects. It's almost the same as like a dinner party. Like, the kinds of topics you might not bring up at a dinner party, probably don't want to bring them up in a digital forum either. And just to keep things easy and kind of, you don't want to add any extra stress to your life, right? But there's a lot of things that are absolutely territories. Again, sports that you play, nonprofits that you volunteer at, funny parenting anecdotes that apply to, a team leader. Right, everybody. Travel, things you've learned from different cultures or visiting. There's a lot of pieces that can naturally weave into a professional platform that have applications to your team, your peers, customers, and what you do day to day in your work life.
No, I think it's great. Why I smiled when you were talking about the stuff, like especially during the pandemic, we had this blending. I will never forget it was like the news reporter. He's sitting there in his office and it's all poised and he's getting ready to talk about and like the 2-year-old comes cruising in from the
Right.
back and the mom's
Yes.
crawling in to try and grab, like,
Yeah.
no, get it. You can't be in there. And it's like, that's real life.
Yeah.
That is real life, and people can grab a hold of stuff like that. So I know, as far as I want to respect your time, so we're kind of coming to the tail end here. Couple quick reminders for my audience. Again, I encourage you, connect with Jess. I'll have to have you back on the show, because there's still, like, one of the things you brought up was that there's a 5-part framework for building a communications platform. That can be a whole show in itself. And so I would love to have you back, but connect with Jess. It's LinkedIn. Jessica K. Jensen is the link. Make sure that you also, if you are interested in connecting and doing better on your own platform, improving your social media presence, building out more of a real brand that people can connect with, then check out copilotcommunications.com. And Jess, any final thoughts you'd like to take us out with today?
Yeah, I'll leave you with one with your audience. It's I love the Warren Buffett sort of metaphor of a moat, and him investing in companies that he felt had a brand moat. Well, I think that absolutely applies to our individual brands. You want to build a moat, and you want to build that moat well before you actually need it. So if you think you might start a company at some point, if you think that you might be promoted and actually become more of a public voice on behalf of your company at some point, don't wait until that gun fires and then you start to build an online brand. Do it now, right? Do it now, because now you're paving the way. You're building an audience. You're honing your voice. You're experimenting, and so that then you've got kind of a ramp, so that when you really need it or want it, you're not starting from scratch.
Love that. So start now, folks. Start now. So, ladies and gentlemen, Jess Jensen with Copilot Communications. Thank you for hanging out with me today. If you can hang out for just a second, I'm going to go ahead and take us out. Ladies and gentlemen, that's going to bring us to a close for another episode of the Leadership Toolkit. Man, I love these conversations. I love the real conversations, because we never know exactly where we're going to go. We come in with one particular path in mind, and then starting to talk about things with just like, hey, overcoming the fear and going after what it is that you love, and talking about, hey, what are some of the differences if you are an entrepreneur? And then that at the very end there, building the moat, right? Start now. I mean, I love the conversations like this. And thank you to Jess for spending time with me today and coming on the show and sharing with all of you. Do me a quick favor, everybody, if I would. This is my one ask all the time. One of the ways that a podcast grows is if you share it. So you got to click on it and like it, and then share it. Most importantly, don't just share it to share it, but share it with somebody that would benefit from hearing this message. Like, that's the biggest way we impact people, is if you say, man, I know someone that would be a great entrepreneur. Man, I know they're getting ready to take off, and they just need to, even if they need to hear that last line, like, start building it now, start building the moat, share it with them. Like, that's make an impact on somebody today. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in and joining me on the Leadership Toolkit. I'll see you next Wednesday. And until then, stay great.